Good morning. There are no problems with the bodywork of the Audi Q7 first generation, and if there are, they are more likely to result from the lack of care users take for these cars, or for example off-road driving, than from the actual lack of refinement of the design. It must be remembered that the Q7 4L is Audi's first SUV, so they tried to achieve a really solid level. One of the few recurring bodywork problems is the optional panoramic roof making unwanted sounds. Lubricating the seals may help. In addition, you need to check the patency of the drainage channels, because their blockage can result in moisture collecting inside the vehicle. One of the more interesting problems, although not very common, is the risk of the passenger side wiper arm breaking. A little more can be said about the electrical system and electronics. Faults can affect the central locking system, with particular reference to the keyless entry system. One of the symptoms may be that the car does not unlock the locks after grasping the handle, but only after pulling it. To open the door, the handle must be pulled again. Replacing the handles may help in such cases. In addition, the panel for operating the MMI multimedia system, multimedia interface, often breaks down, with Q7 users being responsible for many of these failures. There is a place for drinks next to it, and it often happens that the MMI panel gets flooded. It is also worth checking carefully. Cars equipped with a tow bar, errors in the electrical system occur more often than in others. In addition, the operation of the heating and air conditioning system requires checking, especially in heating mode. An unpleasant smell of fuel fumes sometimes comes out of the air vents, sometimes the blower stops working. The operation of the electrically opening/closing boot lid requires checking. If the car had the windscreen replaced, and if it was done improperly, the dusk sensor may not work properly, which will lead to the lights turning on and off too quickly or too slowly, or simply to their random operation. There are a few more potential problems to describe here, although a lot depends on the car's configuration. Let's start with the air suspension, which is optional in most versions. If there is a leak, the suspension can drop on one side, after which the computer will try to compensate and lower the ground clearance on the other side of the car as well. This in turn leads to the compressor working longer, for which it is not adapted and can break down. A similar effect is caused by a failure of the relay working with the compressor, although Audi quickly started using other, more reliable relays. However, most sources describe the air suspension in the Q7 as relatively durable and reliable. Other faults include: sometimes the car stops responding to changes in suspension mode. Sometimes the power steering does not weaken after exceeding parking speeds, although it should. It is worth remembering that the Q7, in its basic versions, had conventional suspension without air springs. It does not cause any major problems, and what is more, it is relatively cheap to service and possibly repair. Although these are not failures in the literal sense, it is worth bearing in mind that the standard brakes tend to overheat during dynamic driving, especially in versions with V8 engines. Tires wear out quickly, especially during dynamic driving. The first-generation Audi Q7 offered 3 petrol engines, with the smallest of them introduced in 2010 and supercharged with a mechanical compressor 3.0 TFSI, available in 2 power versions, 272 and 333 horsepower. From 2005 to 2010, a 350 horsepower 4.2 V8 FSI unit was offered, and from 2006 to 2010, a 280 horsepower 3.6 VR6 FSI. As the FSI markings indicate, all petrol engines have direct fuel injection, which means potential problems with carbon deposits. In the 4.2 volts 8, if anything happens, it usually concerns the valve timing actuators or oil and fuel leaks. In older cars, until the end of 2008, fragile intake manifolds were used. A batch of Q7s with 3.6 and 4.2 FSI engines had faulty fuel pressure sensors. A service campaign was carried out. Cars manufactured after March 2008 should be free from this defect, but older ones were probably repaired or improved long ago. Until 2007, 3.6 engines had faulty oil pumps, or rather faulty mountings for these pumps, which in extreme cases could result in reduced lubrication pressure or reduced timing chain tension. During the inspection, it is worth checking whether this was ever corrected in a specific Q7. The newer 3.0 TFSI engines do not stand out negatively from other engines. The most common problem is increased oil consumption. In 2016, a service campaign was announced for faulty timing tensioners. The campaign covered Q7 3.0 TFSI from the entire production period, i.e. until 2015. This defect usually manifests itself with a rattling sound lasting from 1 to 3 seconds. The phenomenon of carbon deposit accumulation has been somewhat limited, but fuel leaks can also occur here. In all Audi Q7 4L petrol engines, failures may affect injectors and ignition coils. Also, when it comes to diesels, there were 3 engines to choose from, although the 3.0 TDI alone has 4 power versions, from 204 to 245 HP. What's more, even the oldest ones, 233 HP, shouldn't be particularly discouraged, because although the EA896 unit has been improved over time, there is no accumulation of serious defects. What should you pay attention to? First of all, the intake manifolds. There is a risk of the flaps breaking off and falling into the cylinders. Sometimes the injectors jump out of their sockets. You can check and improve their mounting. The pulley vibration damper may require attention. If it fails, the inner part of the pulley may separate from the outer one, which in turn will prevent the multi-groove belt from working, and thus, for example, the alternator. The head should be checked for cracks. The head gaskets may cause problems. This is not always the case, and some suspect that it is related to using the engine's performance too quickly, i.e., before it is warmed up properly. Overall, successful engines. With one small caveat: the extremely complicated chain timing system, which had 4 chains until 2010 and 2 after 2010, which did not reduce the difficulty of replacement. It was installed at the back of the engine, which additionally increases the cost. The 4.2 V8 TDI 326-340 HP engines are also successful. In practice, probably the only reason they are not more popular is that 3.0 is enough for most people. Almost all costs apart from scheduled maintenance are in the 4.2 TDI related to normal wear and tear, e.g. turbochargers or injectors. Problems may possibly be caused by the timing system and, as in other diesels, the DPF filter. The last option is the powerful 5.9 V12 TDI engine, installed only in the Audi Q7 4L with 500 HP, offered under the commercial designation 6.0 and related in construction to the 3.0 TDI. It is no less durable than smaller units, but the operating and maintenance costs are astronomical. Besides, here too you have to watch out for the flaps from the intake manifolds. You can read more about the V12 TDI here. Almost all Audi Q7 4L models left the factory with automatic hydrokinetic gearboxes and quattro all-wheel drive using a torsion differential. Let's start with the drive. It is, at least compared to the competition, a very durable solution, and also quite efficient in lighter terrain. Until the facelift in 2010, automatic gearboxes had 6 gears. Later they were replaced with 8-speed ones, except for the V12 TDI version, which had 6 gears until the end of production in 2012. The older gearbox is considered quite armored, as long as it is well maintained and regularly serviced. Of course, there can be failures, e.g. of the converter, but this is not a serious phenomenon. The newer gearbox also does not scare with sudden failures. It may simply be more sensitive to difficult operating conditions. Theoretically, a manual gearbox can be found in the 3.6 FSI version, but in practice, it is a rarity. For this reason, it is difficult to say anything about the durability of this transmission, although you probably don't have to worry about it. But if you already had such a car, you will probably see boundless surprise in the eyes of mechanics. You might think that since nothing serious happens to these cars, you could buy something like that from the latest years without thinking, for example, instead of a new Golf from the showroom. If such a thought has crossed your mind, then immediately get rid of it, because the Q7 is simply an expensive car to maintain. Tires and brakes, you've read and seen. The fuel consumption itself is not among the lowest either. Yes, well-maintained first-generation Audi Q7s are a good choice compared to the competition, but they will take a toll on your wallet even if they are fully functional, and as a high-end SUV, they have the right to be, especially in the V8 and V12 versions. And if you know of any common errors, your comments are welcome.